Hello and welcome, I'm Olas Gerjuk and you're watching Head to Head with UATV. On February 12th, the Ministry of Information Policy of Ukraine presented its research called White Paper of Special Information Operations against Ukraine from 2014 till 2018. It is a collection of Russian propaganda fakes aimed at undermining Ukraine's territorial integrity and discrediting it on the international arena. To talk more about this research, we welcome to our studio today Dmytro Zolotukhin, Deputy Minister of Information Policy of Ukraine. Hello and thank you for being with us today.
Thank you for inviting.
So, as far as I know, according to you, the distribution of Russian disinformation can be compared to the creation of TV series. Why exactly such a comparison? As far as I understand, this comparison had been used in this research that we will be talking about.
Well, you know, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine, Paulo Klinkin, once said that Russia lies on industrial scale. That statement became a meme in certain areas. I heard it from different experts and speakers in EU member countries, in Great Britain and overseas. And it's definitely true because fakes, it's not a new phenomena, because we heard about lies using in wars and in politics for the decades, for centuries and for thousands of years, but only Russia, only Kremlin made of it a big industry that working each day to pervert the reality in information use. The budget of RT channel is $300 million. The budget of Sputnik international news agency is even more. And so for us, it's a big industry that working to produce fakes. And if Hollywood, for example, the Dream Factory, then the Kremlinwood is the fake factory. So we try to use this comparison, talking about, for example, that Nollywood in Nigeria and Bollywood in India, they're working also on creation of content, but then we have another wood, the Kremlinwood. So the Kremlinwood as the concept, this is the factory, the industry that creates fakes. And the serials is a very understandable for me, for example, and we believe that that would be easy to understand for our readers and for our consumers of this information, that this model of understanding of Russian propaganda would be much more easy for people how to understand what they actually doing in this industry. Everybody knows how the serial is built. We have seasons, we have episodes in each season, and serial is a big story with one plot, with the same heroes inside, actors and so on. The season is a bit more specific time frame and, and a more specific story about those heroes, and each series some kind of little plot in a big series. So for us, the serial is a meta narratives which Kremlin would produce and disseminate all over the world. The seasons, it's a complex of messages, more specific complexes inside the serials, and the series is ordinary fakes and fake stories. For example, one of the serials we discovered and we tried to explain in our book is the serial about MH17. Just remember that first season of this serial was about so-called Su-25 Ukrainian military jet that, according to, for example, fake dispatcher, air controller Carlos, shot the Malaysia flight MH17. Then it was the season about the so-called CIA conspiracy plot about the bombing on the plane. Then there was a story about dead bodies on the plane, that someone take the plane, put the dead bodies inside and shot it all in the sky of Donbass, just to set up local terrorists and say that they are bad. And then, after all those versions, they left because of the findings of JIT investigating group from the Netherlands. New season appeared. Then Russians started to talk about the Buk missile launcher, but then they started to say that that was Ukrainian Buk missile launcher instead of really say that this Buk missile launcher was brought from Russian territory and get back after the crime. So in each of these serials, there were very many fake stories about pilot Captain Voloshin, who was used as the person who operated this Su-25 military jet and somehow accidentally or not accidentally fired into Boeing.
So there is the whole collection of Russian media fake news.
And we expect that those series, they will repeat and repeat in this year and the next year.
So you're trying to deliver the message that there is some kind of logic and tactics behind all this strategy to set the whole sequence of fake messages.
Absolutely. They have to moderate the way they communicate their lies in order to rebuild the real stories that are behind the investigation, for example, of Joint Investigative Team in Netherlands. So when the Joint Investigative Team presents their facts about findings of the investigation, they have to react somehow and maximally pervert the situation to say that those findings were fake, and now we present you the objectives and evidences that we think are real. And this is how the season, for example, about Ukrainian Buk appeared, and it became real even after 1.5 or 2 years after former seasons, when Russians even absolutely didn't talk about Buk missile launcher and say that that was the Ukrainian military jet.
So, as far as I understand, you're trying to explain that there is some pattern of Russian fake news factory, some pattern of actions that is constantly being used, and then if the reader understands and somehow comprehends this information, what he or she has to do about it.
Well, actually, it's so simple as the proverb about duck. If it looks like a duck, if it says like a duck, so maybe it's a duck in reality. So if you are seeing the story about MH17 from Russian side, so please be aware that already we've debunked big packs of fakes, and we showed them as the seasons of fakes. So firstly, that was one plot, then it was another plot, and back in times in last year, even Boris Johnson said that Russians delivered, Russian media and pro-Russian media delivered 36 versions of what has happened in Salisbury in March 2018.
So Great Britain is also a big target of Russian fake news.
And basically they were another victim of this methodology, because it's like you know, like in the fairy tale about Alibaba and 40 thieves, when they are just putting crosses on all the doors just to say that nothing is real and everything is possible, as Peter Pomerantsev says in his book.
In your opinion, is Ukraine the biggest target of Russian news factory?
Absolutely. The point is that they cannot put all the investments in this area. Ukraine is a target because they talk about Ukraine on the Russian TV channels, they talk about Ukraine overseas in European Union member states, in US and all over the world, just to assure the political elites that you have to step back from Ukraine and let us do whatever we want in Ukraine. You have to step back from Donbass and let us to keep this conflict hot, and so on and so forth. So Ukraine is a top agenda, of course, in Russian propaganda, but they started to use very different instruments and means. And even international news agencies, very respectable, they also sometimes pick up the plots that were formed in Russian special services.
As far as I know, this white paper contains about 400 pages, and the time frame is from 2014 until 2018, which is 4 years, so basically approximately 100 pages per year. why exactly this time frame? We do know that Russian propaganda and this hybrid war had been launched a lot earlier than that.
You're absolutely right, and also in this book we even point in the cases that took place back in October 2013, for example, and the theme of LGBT, for example, is one of the themes of manipulation from Kremlin back from 2011. But we've decided to show that this is the hot stage of information aggression against Ukraine, and even if you take any person who was connected or who had some links with his friends or relatives in Russia, till January 2014, it was still possible to talk with them, to exchange arguments and to argue what's going on in reality on Maidan, during the Revolution of Dignity, and so on and so forth. After the February 2014, everything has ruined up, and unfortunately,
there is no dialogue anymore.
Even experts that tried to communicate with their colleagues in Moscow, in St. Petersburg, unfortunately said that, well, it's not possible to argue with them anymore because they are blinded by information they just consume every day.
Well, speaking about this Kremlin wood, as you interestingly named it, if we're talking about 4 years since 2014, 4 years basically of war in Ukraine, of the actual war and also information war, if we're talking about seasons depicted in this book, could you please name us these seasons so we could have some clue what's being depicted in the book?
We think that the total number of the serials is more than 30.
30 series.
We tried to describe 10 of them that we thought that, had the biggest significance all over the last 4 years. They are different. They are about, some of them about the EU and US relations with Ukraine, some of them about Crimea and the ability of the Russian media to assure people in the Russian Federation and overseas that it was the legitimate annexation, and that was really a very big vote of the referendum of when back in March 2014 there was a fake referendum in Crimea. Let me tell you about one of the serials. This serial is about activity of Russian special services to connect ISIS and Ukraine. And the plot is very simple. Usually they say, the Russian MFA and other speakers and experts say that we are fighting with ISIS in Syria. So why not you just join us in fighting ISIS, because ISIS is the evil, and it's no doubt that this is evil. Please join us in fighting with ISIS. But you know, Ukraine is a country who supplies some goods and arms to ISIS. You know that there are some camps for ISIS fighters who came from Syria and Middle East to take a relief in Ukraine, to heal their wounds and to get new documents and then go to European states, maybe to commit some terroristic acts. You have to know that Kyiv is also the target for ISIS terrorists, because in May 2018 we had a championship league finals in Kyiv, and we had very, very many stories that ISIS said that we will bomb Kyiv if you have many fans from other countries in Kyiv. So these are the seasons. The main plot is to connect ISIS to Ukraine and to show to the international elites that you have to act with Ukraine in the same way you act with ISIS. So you just have to forget about Ukraine and leave it to Russia and work with Russia on the fighting with ISIS. And for this they developed those seasons. One season about camps in Ukraine, and we have found very many actually articles, unfortunately, and materials in Western media about this, and without any evidences presented where they've seen those scams. Then another season is again about this Championship League finals. We worked in Ministry of Information Policy. We worked specially and specifically on the monitoring of information space during the finals, because that was a really big thing for Ukraine on the international arena, about the reputation of Ukraine and other things.
Of course.
And of course those messages were very clear. It was message that you shouldn't go to Ukraine for Championship League finals, because you can be a victim of terroristic act. Why? Because we have presented you the post from Telegram Messenger and Twitter accounts of the ISIS fighters who said that they will go to Kiev and bomb the stadium or whatever.
Of course, they would.
That very clear
They would let
message.
us know in advance, of course. So these are all ridiculous and fictional stories, and there was the whole collection of these stories, which is named White Paper, right? As far as I can imagine, it would be pretty stressful and painful to read the whole thing. But could you tell us about the distribution of this book, and where could the viewers buy it? Maybe it is possible to order it online. Maybe there's going to be some delivery abroad.
Well, unfortunately, we now have only Ukrainian version of a book. Because of the different bureaucratic procedures, we have to go through the public procurement procedure. In my opinion, we will fight to get the English version till the end of this half a year. So I suppose we will have it in May or June to present English version. But nevertheless, we have the prospects and previews of these materials in English now, and we already have several invitations to present the materials in European member states, to go to Brussels, Tallinn, for example, and I suppose that we will go with the presentation in Ukraine and abroad. And of course, this is free of charge. You can download the book from the website of the Ministry of Information Policy, mip.gov.ua. And of course, we will try to promote this in social media with the links, with the ability to download this already. And if there isn't any interest to obtain the paper copy, I am open. You can find my contacts on the website. Just email me and get this book.
Well, that's very interesting. I will be looking forward to reading this survey. So far, I thank you for bringing this interesting topic up in this studio for discussion. Thank you for your interesting comments.
Thank you very much.
That was Dmytro Zolotukhin, Deputy Minister of Information Policy of Ukraine. Thank you for watching Head to Head. I'm Oles Gerjuk. Goodbye.